Hello and welcome back to the Football Snapshot. I'm Lewis Nolan and I'm going to talk about Liverpool, but I'm also going to talk about the Champions League in particular because while Liverpool lost 1-0 against Galatasaray, you may have noticed that the other English clubs didn't do particularly well because you had Spurs losing 5-2 to Atletico Madrid. Newcastle picked up a decent result against Barcelona, drawing 1-1 at home. Arsenal, I don't think it was a particularly good result considering the context of Bayer Leverkusen being sixth in the Bundesliga, but they did draw 1-1 away from home, and you would back them at the Emirates to get the result. Man City then lost 3-0 against Real Madrid, and I know that Real Madrid they've got a lot of quality players. That tie is basically over though. I know that Man City, yeah, they can score three goals, but they're not going to keep Real Madrid out and then get through to the quarterfinals. So Real Madrid are effectively through. And then Chelsea lost 5-2 against PSG. Look, you can say that losing against PSG is all right, but three goals, you're not making it up against PSG no matter how good you play on the day, because even if you win, you're not keeping PSG out. So you can safely say that Spurs are going out. You can safely say that Man City are going out. You can safely say that Chelsea are going out. And then with the others, it's sort of up in the air because, well, Arsenal should have more than enough to get the result done at the Emirates, but we have seen them play within themselves plenty of times where when there's pressure or when there's expectation on them to get over the line, it doesn't necessarily go their way. So we'll see what happens there. But even though I'm not a big fan of Mikel Arteta or anything like that, I do expect them to go through. With Newcastle, I expect Barcelona to go through, but if they took it, it's 1-1. They've given themselves a chance, so we'll see with that. But with Liverpool, and I am mentioning the other teams in the Champions League because I think it's important to contextualize Liverpool's loss. I think that Liverpool will get through against Galatasaray, but I'm not confident because in the Champions League, in the knockout stages, or when we are playing a knockout game at Anfield, since we beat Barcelona 4-0 at Anfield in 2019 en route to winning the Champions League, Liverpool have only won one knockout game at the stadium since. So or certainly one knockout game in the Champions League, like I was saying, because obviously we played in the Europa League at the time. And if you want to count Sparta Prague as a standout result at Anfield in a knockout competition, then feel free, but that doesn't exactly inspire me with confidence. But yeah, in a weird way, with all the English teams doing bad, or certainly not apart from Newcastle, but we don't expect Newcastle to win the Champions League at all. But with the English teams doing bad in general, it does sort of give me a little bit of hope for Liverpool because people have argued that this is a really good Premier League season. It's just that teams are so strong defensively that, it's difficult for the teams at the top to separate themselves. And, they point to teams like Wolves being competitive at the bottom of the table. They say that the middle of the table is really good. And to an extent, I agree with that because the Premier League's incredibly physical. You can't really rest any of your key starters in a match if you want to win. And I would say that the middle of the Premier League is exceptional, but the top end, where you have your Arsenals, the Chelseas, Liverpools, Man Cities, Man Uniteds, I don't remember a time watching the Premier League where it's been this bad. Because who's the standout talent in the Premier League? I genuinely would say there's probably Bruno Fernandes at this moment in time, but we've seen in Europe that, yeah, the Premier League teams that are in Europe can compete physically and things like that, but at the end of the day, there's no standout star, there's no standout talent, and some of that, if you look at it from Liverpool's perspective, certainly to do with the fact that I think the manager is blunting their impact. I don't think Arne Slot's getting the best out of Mohamed Salah. I don't think Arne Slot's getting the best out of Ekitike, Verts. He hasn't so far gotten the best out of Isak, but he has been injured, so we do give him some leniency for that. But then if you look at the other teams, Bukayo Saka playing horribly, and he was subbed off for Madueke. Spurs, there is no standout star there. I mean, I know that Dominic Solanke has done well. I think he scored now three consecutive Champions League games for the club. Fair play, former Liverpool player. I mean, I don't mind it when he scores, but again, they're battling relegation. It's not as if they, like I said, they don't have a standout star. Man City, it should be Erling Haaland, but he's really struggling at this moment in time. So again, there's no standout star propelling them over the line. Newcastle and Newcastle. Then Chelsea again. What did Gary Neville call them? The £1 billion, the blue £1 billion bottle jobs. I mean, I know they didn't bottle it against PSG because you can't really bottle it against PSG. but they're a million miles off being even close to where they were in the past. But yeah, and like I was saying, with the English teams doing bad, it does give me a bit of hope where I think that Liverpool have the players next season. I'm not talking about the Champions League to win the Champions League because it depends on a lot of factors, but it does give me hope that next season that Liverpool, probably under new management and with a few more signings, can be the team, I guess, to take, you know, I was going to say like take the English sides back to where they were, but what I mean by that is make them more of a force again. Because when Liverpool were winning the Champions League, when Man City were winning the Champions League, things like that, you had standout players. You had Rodri, you had Salah, you had Mane, you had Firmino, you had all these players, Gundogan as well. But that's what I mean. I think Liverpool have the players to be like that next season. I think that Ekitike, he's had a lot of inconsistencies, and we saw it against Galatasaray. But I think that with better coaching and a better environment, he will be able to iron out his flaws because he does have them. Isaac, we've seen he's one of the best strikers in the Premier League. You're not going to keep him down. I do think his skill set can be particularly useful in Europe. Salah's probably going to leave, so I'm not even going to discuss him because it is what it is. And then with Florian Wirtz, he's struggling again this season. He struggled badly against Galatasaray. He probably should have scored when in the opening stages. Where do you remember he got the ball? The goalkeeper was out of goal, but he didn't. He sort of fluffed his lines. I I know people are criticizing him now. I know Liverpool fans are criticizing him now. I've criticized him. I've called him timid. He is playing very timidly, but I'm not going to deny his talent. I think people will be very surprised at the level he reaches. Maybe in the final few weeks of the season, but probably more likely next season when he's had a better preseason and Liverpool are coached better, regardless of whether that's with Arne Slot or not. But yeah, I am very hopeful that this Liverpool team can be a force in Europe and domestically next season. I'm not confident that they can be a force in Europe this season because I don't know if we're going to get through Galatasaray because we should do. We have the quality. They're not particularly good. I mean, I looked at them. They were very vulnerable defensively, and I know that. I remember I covered the game. I did a preview for the game, both for Sportsmore and for this, and I remember the manager saying that he's going to press really high aggressively. We couldn't cope with their build up. Oh, we couldn't cope with their pressure on in build up. So yeah, they don't need to press as aggressively, but what I worry about is at Anfield, where Liverpool, if we become less aggressive, if we start losing the ball more, say we get a bit panicky, what happens if it gets to half an hour, there's no goal? What happens if it gets to an hour, there's no goal? What happens if then they press high? What happens then if we come under more pressure? Because we're not the mentality monsters anymore. Because I think I saw a stat with Opta basically saying that Liverpool have I think it was 12 times this season gone behind and not gone on and failed to come back into the game or, gone on to lose the game without reply. So the fact that we keep going behind so often and not coming back is a concern because we all know what Jurgen Klopp did. He made Liverpool mentality monsters where yeah, they would lose games, yeah, they would drop points, but you would back them to at least come up with a goal. And I know that Liverpool's European record being this poor at Anfield, that started under Jurgen Klopp, but at the same time, I did believe that Liverpool, I mean, we got to three Champions League finals under Jurgen Klopp, so I'm not complaining. So regardless of the fact that Anfield wasn't necessarily you know, it wasn't necessarily big fear factor in Champions League knockouts that it should have been. I'm not I'm not complaining too much, but I am complaining about Arne Slot because I don't know if he can get through. I don't know if he can get through Galatasaray. We play Spurs on the weekend on Sunday, and I will be doing a preview for that tomorrow, and hopefully uploading it either on Friday or on Saturday. But I don't know if Arne Slot can get through Spurs. And Spurs, I mean, Igor Tudor, 4 games in charge, 4 losses, 14 goals conceded, I think it is. Losses against Arsenal, Fulham, Crystal Palace, Atletico Madrid. He's awful. But I'm like that tells you the extent to which I think Arne Slot's failed to get the most out of Liverpool's players this season, despite the fact that Liverpool's talent in the squad is so much better than what we're showing. We're so much better. We were so much better than what we showed against Galatasaray. So it was really frustrating. But even despite Liverpool being so bad, even though I have so many concerns about Arne Slot, I'm very confident that next season Liverpool can do something. I don't know what Liverpool can do next season, but I'm I'm safely predicting that Liverpool will probably win either the Premier League or the Champions League. But it's a bold prediction. But with that, the squad is that talented that they only need I think they only need supplementary talents, if that makes sense. We probably need a star player in midfield, but other than that, I don't think the wingers, if we get new wingers, have to be particularly outstanding. The defense is largely sorted. Like I said, the midfield probably badly needs a passer. Adam Wharton, Elliot Anderson, take your pick. But yeah, even though the English team's done badly, even though Liverpool have done badly in Europe, I am quite confident for next season. Against Galatasaray in the second leg, I don't know, but I'll be doing a preview of the second leg when it gets closer to the tie, when it gets closer to the Anfield game. But in the meantime, I just wanted to say that even though Liverpool have been disappointing, even though Liverpool have been poor, even though the English sides in general in the Premier League, even though the quality has dropped off to such an extreme degree, I do firmly believe that Liverpool can resurrect the image of the Premier League as being, the pinnacle of football, or certainly pinnacle of European football, other than Real Madrid and Barcelona, obviously. But I'm confident, so yeah. Hopefully Liverpool get the job done against Galatasaray in the second leg, but we'll see. And like I said, I'll be doing a preview on that again, so you'll just have to keep an eye out for that. But thank you for watching, and I would be very grateful if you did watch this and you did subscribe because, 40, we're on 40 something subscribers last time I checked, 42. And if we can get closer to 100, maybe by the end of the season, you never know, 100 subscribers would be quite nice.